Arata Hinohara was a depressed high school student who used to be a talented athlete, but he got betrayed and bullied by his best friend in middle school. Ever since then, he was unable to live freely as the trauma from that betrayal lived rent-free in his head. Everything changes when one day he switches places with another person from a parallel world, and is immediately pushed into a battle where only the winner can survive. This forces him to face his fears, and he turns into one of the strongest heroes in the world. Much before that, he was a coward because the constant bullying from his middle school best friend Masato had broken him completely. He was getting a little more cheerful thanks to the new friend he made in high school, but when he heard his new best friend talking to some bullies about how he was never friends with Arata, his heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. Arata lost all faith in others and thought that he would never trust anyone now. He just wanted to disappear from this world. In another world, another boy with the same name as Arata is running away from his home. His grandma tells him to give up on running and accept his fate, and Arata too refuses to pretend to be a woman because cross-dressing is not for him. Enraged because he is talking back, his grandma blasts him with a magic attack, and he falls into the sea. He is rescued later, and then his grandma tells him that he has no choice but to live as a woman from now on and become the next ruling princess of the kingdom. It turns out that their kingdom is always ruled by a princess with magic powers, and the princess is always chosen from the Arata-2's clan. The current princess is old now, but the clan has not had a girl in many decades to replace her. That is why Arata-2's grandma declared that he was a girl when he was born, and now he must become the next ruling princess. He tells her that it is impossible because only women can use magic in this world, and that is one of the most important criteria to become the ruling princess. However, Granny tells him that if he doesn't go as the next princess, their entire clan will be purged out for failing to do their duty. She tells Arata-2 to swallow his pride and become a woman so that he can protect their clan and their divine weapon. Arata-2 just lifts the rusty sword and begins playing with it, saying that it is just a piece of junk, not a divine weapon. Granny shouts at him but suddenly suffers from a stroke, and seeing her like this, Arata-2 has no choice but to act as a woman for the sake of his clan. The next day, Arata-2 gets in a carriage with his personal servant Kotoha, who explains that the princess subdues the gods of this world who reside in the swords. The current princess has already ruled for 2 tenures totaling 60 years, and she is too old now. This lecture doesn't help Arata-2 feel better after he is dressed like a girl, and he wishes to vanish into another world. To help him feel better, Kotoha gives him a good luck charm that she got from Princess Kiku when she served her in the past. Her gesture cheers up Arata-2, and he says that he will try his best to fool Kiku and her guards. The next day, he goes to the capital and enters the gigantic tower, which is the residence of the ruling princess. Arata-2 goes to the top of the tower and finds himself surrounded by the shrines of the 12 guardians, the strongest warriors in the kingdom and the loyal guards of the princess. Suddenly, Princess Kiku comes to greet him and start the ceremony, and Arata-2 is astonished to see that she is not an old hag like he imagined, but a lowly instead. Arata-2 finds that Kiku is a very kind and nice person, and he doesn't want to betray her trust. But then suddenly, one of her 12 guards leaps to the altar and slashes her. She is devastated at the betrayal of the man named Kanaji and attacks him with a magic blast, but is too weak to do any damage. The princess falls to the ground and uses the last bit of her energy to preserve her body, and as Arata-2 lets his real voice slip out, Kana learns that he is a man. He planned to kill the next princess anyway, so he doesn't care about the gender in this matter. Arata-2 freaks out and asks the 12 guardians to do something because the princess they're supposed to guard just died, but it turns out that every single one of them is a traitor. Kana suddenly attacks Arata-2, who somehow dodges the attack and then jumps into the pool below. As the green flames on top of the tower go out, the public panics and Kana tells everyone that the princess has been killed by a guy named Arata, who pretended to be a woman in order to get close to her without raising suspicions. Kana mobilizes the entire army to find Arata-2, who runs through the town shirtless to get to a safe spot. In desperation, he heads to the Kanda forest, which is known to be a dreaded place that consumes those who enter it, and those who leave it are forever changed. Arata-2 can only think about the 12 guardians betraying the princess when suddenly, the forest starts echoing with strange noises. Arata-2 wonders what is going on, and at the same time, Arata also hears someone calling his name. For a brief moment, they see each other floating in the sky, and then they are switched with each other. Arata finds himself in the forest, unable to understand what just happened or where he is. Just as he gets out of the forest and watches the tower, a swift arrow almost hits him. Kana and some soldiers are there to capture him because to them, he appears just like Arata-2. Arata takes shelter inside the trees to avoid their arrows, and suddenly, he is teleported away somewhere. Kotoha leaps at him out of nowhere because she also believes that he is Arata too. She says that she is really glad that he is fine, but Arata asks her who she is. She replies that it is not time for games and grabs his hand as she leads him safely to their village. Once they reach the village, Kotoha tells Granny that Kikyu is dead and everyone thinks Arata 2 killed her. Granny is shocked, and then Kotoha says that Arata 2 has lost his memories as well after entering the Kanda forest. Granny is freaked out and takes Arata to the secret basement, where he reveals that he is from another world. She believes him because the legend of Kanda forests says that those who return from the forest are completely changed, and it might be because all of them are switched with another person from a different world. Arata is shocked to hear this and asks if he can go back, but she refuses, saying that he must live as Arata 2 now. Arata refuses to live as a wanted criminal, but Granny is firm that her grandson would never commit a crime like this. Arata is going mad thinking about his life, which is full of constant suffering, when suddenly Granny hears Kotoha's screams. She goes outside to find that Kana has taken her hostage, and he demands the old woman to hand Arata 2 over to him if she wants the girl to live. Granny claims that she doesn't know anything about it, so Kana tortures Kotoha, asking if she wants to die protecting a criminal. She yells that she believes that Arata 2 did not kill the princess, and those words shake Arata to his core. He cannot let someone else's faith be betrayed, so he gets out to save Kotoha. Kana tosses Kotoha aside as he commands a soldier to kill him. Arata stumbled back and noticed the rusty sword fall to the ground. He grabs it to defend himself and pushes the soldier back. Suddenly, the power sleeping within the rusted sword awakens. Arata and Granny notice it, but Kana doesn't. He thinks that a divine weapon is useless in the hands of a normal person, so he decides to kill Arata by using the fire ability of his sword. Arata panics, but as Granny tells him to tell the god inside the sword to appear, he does the same. Suddenly, a golden barrier appears around him, and the fire from Kana's attack starts getting absorbed into it. No one can believe what is happening, with Arata being the most shocked by this sudden discovery. Since Kana's fire attack is getting continuously absorbed, he decides to subdue his weapon's power. He claims that it is unbelievable that Arata is also a chosen one, and then suddenly the damaged roof crumbles down. As the soldiers search through the ruins of the house, they don't find Arata and others. Kana is sitting by himself when another one of the 12 guardians named Akka comes there and informs him that they have a change in plan. They want to capture Arata alive now so that they can put him through a trial and then punish him in front of everyone to succeed in their rebellion. Back in the modern world, Arata's mom and sister are looking for him, but they can't reach out to his number. Just then, they see a bunch of people gathered around someone, talking about a handsome, shirtless man on the streets. Arata's mom is a bit of a pervert, so she forgets about her son and goes to see the handsome guy, only to find that it is Arata 2, who looks exactly like her son to her. On the other hand, Arata and others are in a cave, where Granny tells Arata that the gods of this world reside in divine weapons. The chosen ones can wield those divine weapons and command the power of gods, and now Arata is one of them. After that, Kotoha gives him Arata 2's favorite food, hoping that his memories will return if he eats it. Arata feels bad for the girl who wants Arata 2 back so desperately that she can't accept that he is a different person. He goes outside to get some fresh air, but Kotoha follows him there too. She tells Arata that his memory will return surely, and when he tries to explain that he is a different person from another world, she nods her head as if she believes everything he says. She then suddenly hugs him from behind, saying that she believes that her master will return. Arata is already flustered, and then Kotoha opens his shirt to find the lucky charm that she gave him missing. She asks if he lost it, and even though she is upset, she gives him the second one, the set. Arata starts opening up to her when suddenly Kana arrives there and he has already taken Granny hostage. He tells Arata to surrender or fight him, and Granny forbids Arata from using his weapon, so gets arrested instead. Kana throws him into a prison carriage and says that he will be tried officially for the murder of the princess, and Arata yells that he doesn't even know what he is talking about. Kana thinks he lost his memories in the forest, but he doesn't care because he intends to punish him anyway. Arata goes mad inside the carriage after that, when suddenly his lucky charm starts shining and it projects a video on the wall, showing Arata 2 in his room. Both the boys are shocked to see it, and Arata tries to return to his room through the portal, but he bumps his head into the wooden carriage. Finally, both the Aratas realize and accept that they switch worlds. Arata 1 asks Arata 2 why he killed the princess, and he replies that he's being framed for a crime Kana did, and all the 12 guards are on it. He claims that the princess looked devastated when the bastards betrayed her, and he will never forgive them. Arata is shocked to hear this, but he decides to trust Arata 2. Arata 2 then asks if Kotoha and Granny are fine, and Arata replies that they have not been arrested. Arata 2 is relieved, and he asks him to take care of them. Arata also reveals that the divine sword awoke, and Arata too is fired up because now someone can fight against the 12 guardians. They promise each other that they will try to find a way to return things to normal, but then suddenly, the portal starts shrinking. Just then, Arata's mom also starts coming to his room in the modern world. Arata tries calling out to her, but it is no use as the portal shuts down. The next day, a grand jury is called to decide Arata's punishment. The 12 guards act as the prosecutor and witnesses, and they frame Arata for killing the princess while disguised as a woman. They show a picture of the princess, who is hanging by a thread between life and death. The jury gets furious on seeing this, and they immediately demand death penalty for the criminal without any trial. Kanna silences them and says that the 12 guardians could not protect the princess, and they are deeply saddened by it. Arata snaps on hearing this and tells Kanna to cut the crap. He calls the 12 guardians traitors and murderers who are worse than scum. He asks them, did they not feel bad when they attacked the princess who trusted them with her life? Suddenly, the warrior named Akka sends his spear to Arata and asks him how he can lie about the 12 guardians harming the princess because they are still grieving with her death. The other elite warriors also put on the same act, and despite it being a very poor acting attempt, they managed to convince the jury. Now that Arata is cornered by everyone, he remembers how he was bullied in school and gives up. He is exiled to the prison island of Katoya as his punishment instead of being executed because Kanna wants him to live till he finds out which divine weapon is strong enough to overpower his sword. Arata is put in a prison ship and flown away, and soon Kotoha is thrown into his cell because she was caught sneaking into the ship. The guard says that she will also get exiled to Katoya along with her man, but Kotoha doesn't mind as long as she is by his side. She has snuck in his bag and sword along with her, and Arata thinks that he can break the walls of the prison using his divine sword. He tries to manifest its power, but nothing happens. He gives up, but then suddenly, his lucky charm starts glowing and he and Kotoha are spirited away to the sky. Suddenly, the spirit of Princess Kiku appears before them, and she calls Arata her new guardian. Kiku tells Arata that his words during the judgment earlier made her happy, and she saw hope in him to create a stable future for the kingdom. Kiku explains that till now she used her power to subdue the gods within the divine weapons so that their power could be used for the welfare of the kingdom. However, if she dies, the divine weapons will be free, and soon, the warrior bearing their power will be swept away by great ambitions that will ultimately throw the world into chaos. That is why Kiku wants Arata to restore her kingdom on her behalf. To do that, he needs to bring his divine sword to her comatose body before she loses whatever little life is remaining in her. Arata is too uncertain about it, and he says that a weak and wimpy boy like him can't do anything. However, Kiku says that she can only trust him with this task. Arata is shocked, and then suddenly he returns back to the prison with a bright flash. He then wonders if he can really do what the princess wants him to. Konoha claims that Kiku believes in him, and she does too. She tells him that for starters, he should store his divine weapon inside his body, because chosen ones can do so. Arata finds it rather convenient to store the sword inside his hand, and in the meantime, the ship arrives at Katoya, the prison island that looks like it is out of a steampunk dystopia movie. The guards throw Arata and Kotoha in there with many other criminals. Arata shelters Kotoha from the death stares they receive from the rest of the prisoners, who curse the princess killer. The mood is dark and menacing, but then suddenly, two rowdy boys arrive there and tell Arata that they are the bosses of this prison, so he should give them all his stuff and clothes. They start blushing on seeing the pretty Kotoha, and using this chance, Arata tries to escape from them. The red-headed boy named Ken notices him and immediately attacks him. He injures Arata's hand and knocks him to the ground, asking how someone as weak as him can kill the princess. Before Arata can explain his innocence, the prison starts shaking and the prisoners freak out, saying that it is the hour of reckoning. They run away, and Arata gets confused as even Ken runs away without finishing their fight. Suddenly, the huge hollow tubes begin moving around, and they attack two people, sucking them in. Just with that, the entire prison goes silent. Arata wonders what is happening when a woman comes there and tells him that it was the act of Warden Suga, who runs this prison. Every day he chooses two prisoners and eats them, and everyone calls it the hour of reckoning. The woman then steals a pin from Kotoha's hair, saying that it is the price for giving information as she heads back. Soon after that, Arata tries to escape from the prison using his sword. He tries to call forth its power, but it is entirely useless. In the meantime, Kotoha has found a warm bath for Arata, and she offers to rub his back. He refuses her offer, but then Kotoha notices his injury and heals it using magic. Arata is curious, so Kotoha tells him that she is from a servant clan, and the women from her clan have the ability to protect their master. She uses her magic on Arata's head to make him relax. Finally, Arata realizes Kotoha's devotion to her master, which compelled her to come to the prison with him. He thanks her, when suddenly the prison starts shaking again and the ground under Kotoha's feet crumbles. She falls to the floor below, and Arata freaks out because he couldn't move his body even when he saw her in danger. He still tries to find her and asks other prisoners if they saw her, but they have no answer. Some people even start chasing after him because they want to take down the princess killer. Arata hides from them when suddenly he finds a woman from earlier, who introduces herself as Osum. She tells Arata that there are rumors that if anyone kills the one who assassinated the princess, they will be allowed to go home, but she doesn't think it is true. She then asks where is the girl with him, and Arata asks her if she knows anything. Osum affirms, and Arata immediately offers his bag as the price for the information. Osum tells him that the redhead named Ken took her and gives this information to him for free because she knows how it feels to lose someone special. She asks Arata to hurry because Ken is known to be a serial troublemaker. However, Ken and his sworn younger brother Jin are like obedient little puppies in front of Kotoha. She thanks them for saving her when she fell, and then Jin runs away so that his brother can score with the girl. However, Ken also doesn't know what to do with the girl, so he leaves the room shortly. Outside, he finds Jin unconscious and Arata beside him. Ken thinks that Arata knocked out his brother, and he attacks him in rage. Arata tries to clear the misunderstanding, but Ken doesn't listen, forcing him to pull out his sword. Just then, Jin wakes up and tells his brother that Arata is not the enemy. Suddenly, a criminal rushes to attack Ken, but Arata knocks him out with a kick. Ken recognizes the man as his rival gang's member, and then Jin tells him that the gang attacked him and took away his ring, but then Arata saved him. Ken asked Arata to look after Jin as he rushes to get revenge and retrieve his brother's ring. Arata takes Jin to the room where he tells his story while Kotoha treats him. He was abducted by thieves to become one of them, and that was where he met Ken. They became like brothers quickly, but when the gang got into trouble, they framed the two boys and sent them to Kotoha. His ring was his mom's only keepsake, and Ken had promised Jin that they would make it out of the prison and then go home together. After all this, Arata and Kotoha finally get the chance to talk in private. He tells her that he is ready to help the princess now, and the first thing they need to do is find a way out of the prison. Jin says that it is impossible because Warden Suga is a chosen one with a divine weapon and they can't defeat him. Just then, Ken comes there with Jin's ring. He thanks Arata for saving his brother, but then challenges him for a fight again. He believes that hunting down Arata will get him the ticket to get out of the prison island. But before they can do anything, the reckoning begins. A hollow pipe comes down and abducts Ken, while the second one targets Arata. Arata is frozen with fear, but Jin pushes him away so that he can go with his brother. Arata is rattled because of his failure as he could not move in time to save others once again. However, seeing Jin's actions gives him courage, and he decides to save the brothers. He takes the large pipes that head upwards because they might find the warden there. He knows that it will be dangerous, so he promises to protect Kotoha from everything. On the other hand, Ken and Jin are on the top floor, tied by the strong iron pipes. They struggle to become free, but the pipes tighten even more on them. Shuka declares that he will judge them for their sins and gives them a chance to fight each other to death, promising to let the survivor go. Ken refuses to fight his brother, but Suba tells him that if they don't fight, both of them will die. He drops them on the arena and then gives them their weapons too. Jin doesn't want to fight, but Ken picks up his weapon and starts attacking him. Arata and Kotoha reach there just in time to see Ken attacking Jin. Arata jumps inside, telling Suga to immediately stop this madness. The cruel warden replies that he won't let anyone interfere with his justice. He attacks Arata with pipes, but he dodges and says that the boys are not bad people. Suga just points at Ken, who is frantically attacking Jin. He even tells him that he is not his little brother anymore, and those words remind Arata of his best friend's betrayal. Suddenly, Ken leaps towards Jin to attack him, and he instinctively swings his weapon and hits him away. As Ken falls, he recalls the time he met Jin in the thieves' den. He had just been taken away from his family and was crying a lot, but Ken promised that he would take him back to his mother to calm him down. Now he can only hope that Jin survives and escapes, and Arata realizes that Ken sacrificed himself for his brother. However, Suba traps Jin instead of freeing him, saying that he is a criminal for attempted murder. Arata is furious that Suga was just toying with their emotions, so he draws his sword in rage and cuts through the pipes to free Jin. Suddenly, a giant pipe attacks Arata and he latches onto it. He drops from the top and keeps getting thrashed, but still hangs on somehow. Everyone else also witnesses the fight, and then Suba asks Arata how he can face him and doesn't even know how to use his weapon. Konoha shouts his name, and Arata suddenly remembers his promise to always protect her. He requests his divine weapon to show its true power. Suddenly, a golden light radiates from his sword, leaving everyone in the prison dazzled. Arata is in his golden barrier, and the pipes around him start disintegrating just as he reaches near them. Suga attacks Arata with his full power. But Arata's single blow neutralizes his attack and exposes the real body of the warden that was underneath the island the entire time. He's just an old man with pipes protruding from his body and a black weapon stabbing his stomach. Arata thinks that the poor man is suffering, so he tries to free him, but just as he holds his black sword, he sees Suba's past. He was a gentle and kind person once, and he treated the criminals with compassion, telling them to rethink their actions and change their lives to go outside. However, a man he trusted betrayed him because he felt that Suga looked down upon him. He slashed him and then threw him into the volcano before stabbing him with his divine weapon. Because of this betrayal, Suga switched to the dark side and turned into a demon. Pipes began shooting out of his body, killing the traitor and transforming the prison. The twisted mind of Suba decided to never trust anyone again, and he used his power to trap everyone in a hell of his making. Arata finally understands the reason Suga became like this, but the old warden thinks that he can't understand him. Suga asks him to finish him, and even the prisoners cheer on Arata to kill the old man. However, Arata calms his weapon and then tries pulling out the black sword from Suga. The black aura from the sword starts spreading towards Arata, filling his mind with rage and hate towards those who betrayed him. Arata screams in anguish as tears flow down his face, but he swears to save Suga at all costs. He pulls out the sword from him and falls to his knees. The old warden asks him why he went so far to save him, and Arata replies that it is because both of them were betrayed and hurt, but he still wants to trust and help others. Suga is moved by his words and thanks Arata for freeing him from the dark side. The sword suddenly returns to its original form, and Suga reveals that it houses the god Senua inside it. He starts disintegrating, and then enters his sword that explodes into golden energy. Suga tells Arata that he submits his power to him and asks him to wield his sword with justice. The golden energy enters Arata's sword, and he transforms his old sword into the sword Senua. He releases its power at once, and a golden energy begins transforming Vitoya as everyone watches in awe. The people who were taken away during Reckoning are returned alive too, and everyone is happy. Just then, Kana comes there looking for Arata. He had seen the bright flash of light from the sky, and he started interrogating the people about what happened. Shuka's voice alerts Arata about danger and tells him to leave, while he appears in a spectral form before Kana. Kana realizes that the old warden was defeated, and Shuba tells him that Arata is strong and so is his divine sword. He reveals that it is the Sword of Origins that will rule over the world. In the meantime, Ken and Jin take Arata to the boat they used to live on and use it to escape from the island. On the other hand, Arata too is living as carefreely as ever, even when he's in Arata's home. His family is worried about him because the doctor diagnosed him with temporary amnesia. His dad says that they should keep him out of school for a few days, but his mom is against it. She says that they should be wise and courageous so that they can understand and support their son. Just then, Arata too comes downstairs, saying that his body is stiff because he has not hunted in a while. Everyone is startled, but his parents try to act like they know what he is talking about. Arata's sister, however, is fed up with this bullshit. Back in a fantasy world, Ken returns to his home territory, still thinking about Suba's words that Arata has the Sword of Origin. Not far away from him, Arata and his group have barely managed to land on an island after their boat fell apart midway. They check maps, and Ken says that they are far away from the capital, and to get there, they need to go through Kena's territory. Arata is curious about it, so Kotohat explains that the 12 guardians are rulers of 12 domains of the kingdom, and without the princess to rule over them, they are heading back to their territories. Suddenly, they see smoke in the distance and follow to find some ordinary people camping in the forest. Jin recognizes them as the people from his village and runs to them. They recognize him too, and Jin tells everyone that it is safe to come out now. Just then, his mom comes out of her tent, and she is really emotional to see her son back. They hug each other, and then Ken and others also arrive there. Jin tells his mom about how Ken saved him, and she thanks him. He replies that it is no big deal, but he is already sad that he might lose Jin now. Meanwhile, Arata talks with villagers and learns that a war may break out soon because the 12 guardians are back to ruling their own territory, and all of them are ambitious to gain more power. That is why the villagers are escaping to places far away from struggle. Arata wonders what will happen now, and Ken tells him that one of the 12 guardians will rise to the top and become king. He says that in the past too, the 12 guardians used to fight all the time, but the princess suppressed them and brought peace to the entire kingdom. Soon, Jin and the villagers leave, and Arata and friends follow to bid farewell. They come to a waterfall, which almost vanishes each month, opening the entrance to a secret passage. The villagers leave, wishing Arata and Kotoha all the best. Jin also says bye to Arata and Kotoha, and then tells Ken to come along with him. However, Ken doesn't go with him, And as the waterfall's flow increases, Jin's mom takes her son away. Jin wonders what is happening, but then Ken smiles, telling him to live happily with his mom till they meet later. The waterfall returns to its full strength with that, and as the path closes, Jin is in tears. Arata asks Ken why did he do that, and he replies that it was his gang that kidnapped Jin, so he has no right to be with his family. He tells Arata and Kotoha to go away on their path too, because he wants to be alone now. However, Arata just grabs his hand and tells him that he is coming along with them. Though half reluctant, Ken decides to go along with them. Arata gets tired pretty soon on the journey, and as the group decides to take a break, they see a huge monster that freaks Arata out. It roars loudly and then starts chasing them. They run and trip, and the angry monster passes over them without realizing they were under it. Once Arata and his friends are safe, they see movement in the bushes and find a girl holding the egg of the monster they just saw. The monster finds them again, and everyone runs away. Ken is the last one to react, so the monster chases him while everyone else gets to safety. Arata and Kotoha ask the girl named Hino why she stole the egg of the monster because it could be dangerous, and she replies that her mistress is expecting a baby soon, so she wanted to give the giant egg to her for nutrition. Suddenly, the baby monster inside the egg hatches and Hino is disappointed that she can't do anything now. Just then, Hino's master Ohika comes there riding on a strange horse, and Ken is right behind him. Ken says that this man saved him, and just as Arata thanks Ohika, he develops a high fever and collapses. When Arata wakes up, he finds himself in Ohika's house with Ken by his side. Ohika's wife comes there with a change of clothes, and she is relieved to see that Arata is up. After that, Arata checks out his belongings and finds his smartphone among them. He immediately checks it out while trying to hide the phone from Ken, like he is an annoying little cousin who wants to know if he has any games. Arata switches on the phone, and luckily it is still working. The last message on it is from Suguru, his new friend who betrayed him in the end. Arata was a bit gloomy for a moment, but then Ken remembered something important. He tells Arata that the person named Ohika is actually Kana's servant. If he finds out their true identity, they could be in trouble, and Arata freaks out at hearing that. Just then, Ohika enters the room with a divine sword in his hand. He uses his power to repair Ken's battered spear, and seeing Arata shocked, he tells him that not all divine weapons are used for destruction. He then says that he doesn't like war either, and thanks to Kana being a kind ruler, his region is quite prosperous. At the same time, Kana is back at home, and he is visiting the grave of a person very dear to him. He promises her that he will become the king and take the throne for her. Just then, one soldier comes running to him with news that one of his closest servants has been attacked. Kana goes there in a hurry to find everyone in the household massacred, and he learns from his servant that Eka attacked them. Kana is shaken to his very core on hearing this news because Eka was one of his closest friends. He comes to know that other servants are also under attack, so he decides to reach them quickly, but everyone has been killed except Ohika. Kana decides to hurry to Ohika's village so that he can at least save him. Back in the village, everything is peaceful. Ohika has heard of the war drawing close, but he is not going to participate in it because he doesn't like bloodshed. Arata remarks that it is stupid to kill each other to rise up the ranks, but Ohika tells him that it is not necessary to kill another to become the king. He explains that if one can make other chosen warriors submit to him, he can unite all divine weapons and become king without shedding any blood. Arata realizes that was what Suba did, and coincidentally, Ohika has heard about that too. Arata is on his edge now, fearing that his secret has been discovered. Ohika says that the person who assassinated the princess was also a chosen one who escaped from the prison. He claims that if the news about him getting Suba to surrender is true, the man was framed. He explains that Suba's divine weapon, Samiwa, can see anyone's true nature, so it won't submit to a criminal. Ohika then turns around, hinting that he knows that Arata is the person in question, but before anything can happen, the servant tells Ohika that there is a guest waiting for him. Later, the servant girl Hino arranges for Arata and the group to leave immediately because the guest in their house right now is Aka. Regardless of the danger, Arata and others sneak to the meeting room, where they hear Aka tell Ohika that Kana was the one who killed the princess. He puts the entire blame on Kana, saying that he was the mastermind behind the assassination and is using Arata just to distract everyone. He then finally comes to the point and tells Ohika to become his servant instead of a murderer's. Ohika replies that he doesn't believe in what Aka says, and even if he told the truth, he is loyal to Kana and will follow him regardless of his sins. In response, Aka draws out his divine spear and stabs the ground with it, creating earth spikes. The spikes don't hurt Ohika, but take his pregnant wife hostage. Ohika asks Aka why he is doing this, because he doesn't need his help to become the king. Aka replies that he is doing this because he wants all the divine weapons and he has taken the weapons of the other 6 servants of Kana. Aka then asks Ohika if he will let his wife die or surrender peacefully. Arata is horrified on hearing how low Aka can go to achieve his goal. He's about to draw his weapon, but Ohika senses that and declares that he will surrender. However, he wants Aka to promise that he won't harm his wife or guests. He promises that, and then Ohika draws his weapon and submits to Aka and his superior divine weapon. His body turns into energy and enters the sword, and then it goes to Aka's divine weapon. Ohika's wife cries on realizing that she lost her husband, and everyone else is shocked too. Just then, two servants come running after hearing the loud noises, and Aka kills them without batting an eye. Ohika's wife begs him to at least spare her, but he kills her mercilessly too. Arata is furious, and he compares Aka to a demon. Suddenly, the curtain is cut open as Aka has sensed everyone behind it. He's about to attack Arata as well when suddenly Kana comes there. He is devastated to see the scene of carnage and asks Aka how he could do such a thing. Aka replies that the war to become king has started and he won't stop at anything to achieve the throne. The enraged Kana uses his fire attack on Aka, who blocks it with his stone wall. In the next moment, Kana jumps at him from top and attacks again, but Aka succeeds in blocking that too. He then sends rock spikes towards Kana, who can only dodge them. One spike barely misses him but manages to damage his ship. Aka attacks him with more spikes and Kana is completely surrounded. Aka attacks him with a rain of rock bullets, and as Kana tries to defend against it with a fire wall, Aka attacks him from behind. They fall to the ground below, and the clash of their weapons releases a powerful shockwave that rattles the entire place. Arata and his friends are tossed away, but he activates his barrier ability in time to make them land safely. On the other side, Kana is consumed by his rage and covered in fire as he demands to know why Aka did this. Aka reminds him of their friend Imi, who loved Kana, but she died because of him. Kana is left aghast by his words, and he immediately loses his weapon that goes towards Aka. Aka stabs the ground and creates stone replicas of Kana's servant's divine weapon. He declares that he took them all, and now he's going to take away Kana's sword too. A sword sinks into the ground, so Kana retorts the throwing hands at Aka, who has been his friend since childhood. They used to train together, but Aka was always the stronger one, and he manages to stop Kana's attack easily as always. He pulls him closer and accuses him of betraying everyone else first. He pushes him away and then starts hitting him with earth whips, saying that he will not kill him so that he can live in the shame and pain of his failure. Despite all the evil acts Kana did, Arata feels pity for him on seeing him like this. He steps out and tells Aka to stop because it is shameful for a warrior to beat an unarmed man. Aka knows that Arata is a chosen one too, and he asks him if he also wants the throne. Arata replies that there is no meaning in becoming a king if he has to kill innocent people to reach the throne. Aka mocks him, saying that there is no place for such useless, lofty ideals in this world. He says that for every chosen one with a divine weapon, there are only two options. Either they can submit to a more powerful person, or they can become stronger and make others submit to them. With that, Aka tells Kana to suffer in his agony and leaves in a dust storm. Later, everyone is dejected and Hino goes to Kana, asking him to bring her beloved master back. She tells him that Ovika respected him the most in the world and believed that he could do anything. Kana controls his grief as he replies that it is not possible to bring Ohika back because his soul has now become part of Aka's weapon. Hinoma starts crying and curses Kana and Aka for ruining her happiness. Kana can only apologize to her before he leaves, but Arata stops him, asking why the hell is he looking depressed. He asks if he's unhappy because he lost his weapon or because he lost people who trusted wholeheartedly in him. Arata grabs his collar, asking if he never thought that karma would come for his ass when he betrayed the princess. He tells Kana that he doesn't deserve to act sad now, and Kana slaps his hand away, telling Arata that he doesn't know anything. He claims that they were unjustly subdued under Kiku, and he could not miss the golden chance to kill her and free everyone's weapons. He walks away with that, and then Hino curses Arata too, saying she hates all the chosen warriors. Arata has no idea what to tell her and no idea what to do now. He walks away and stays by himself till nightfall. He thinks about Kiku's request and wonders if she wanted him to join the fight to become the king. Just then, Kotoha and Ken come there. They encourage Arata and tell him that he should fight too. However, Arata is angry and frustrated at his weakness because he could not do anything to save Ohika and his wife. He says that he wants to get strong and make Aka submit to him, but then claims that he will become the same as Aka then. Ken tells Arata to stop acting like a wimpy bitch. He knows that Arata has never really fought anyone before and tells him that if he just wants to cry, he can stay at home because if he wants to get stronger, he has to hurt others. Ken asks him to give up if he can't do that, but Arata refuses, saying that Kiku entrusted this important task to him. However, he wants to save the world without making others submit to him. Konoha reminds him that Shuba didn't submit to him because he lost, but because he entrusted his power and goals to him. Arata suddenly gets the idea, but Konoha has more to say. She states that in the past, Granny used to tell her stories about a legendary divine weapon that possessed no attack abilities and only defensive skills. However, it was also the strongest of the divine swords. It was called Tsukuyo, the divine sword of origins, and Konoha believes that it is the same one Arata has. She believes that using the sword of origins, he can reign over the world without fighting. As Arata calls the name of Tsukuyo, a blinding golden light is released from the sword, illuminating the entire area. On the other hand, Arata too is looking at Arata's pictures with his traitorous friend Masato. Outside the house, his recent friend Subaru is nervously wandering around. Arata too notices him and decides to meet him. After giving him a jump scare, Arata too asks Subaru who he is, and the nerd gets sad thinking that Arata is angry because he heard him talk with the bullies about how they were never friends. He just returns the game Arata had lent him and runs away. The next day, Arata too goes to school after a long break, and the first thing he does is greet Masato. Masato is shocked to see him like this, and Arata too asks him to tell him more about Arata because they must be friends since they have a lot of photos together. Masato is confused, but then suddenly, Arata's mom drags him away to meet the principal. However, the Dutcherbag Masato is angry now because he thinks Arata is screwing with him. Later, two bullies call Arata too to the roof where Masato is waiting for him. He asks Arata too if he is faking amnesia now, but he ignores him and rushes to see the view from the roof. Masato is pissed now and asks him who he thinks he is. Arata too throws the same question back at him, asking why he is acting like a hotshot. Masato is frustrated, and as other bullies try to corner Arata too, he decides to leave, saying that he is not interested in wimps who need to be in a gang to be intimidating. Enraged, Masato attacks him, but Arata too grabs his hand and then knocks him out with a single kick. He remarks that he sure acts arrogant for being so weak, and then says that he doesn't know what his deal with the original Arata is, but he will not let him humiliate him anymore. In the fantasy world, Arata and others are crossing a river when Kotoha sprains her ankle. Ken offers to carry her on his back, but she refuses and tries walking by taking Arata's support. They take a rest in an abandoned hut, and Ken heads out to look for medicinal herbs. When Arata and Kotoha are alone, she clings to him, saying that she's a normal girl who needs to let her feelings show sometimes. Arata is flustered, but he realizes that Kotoha's feelings are not for him but for Arata too, so there is no point in getting close to her. He walks out and then uses his lucky charm to communicate with Arata too. They brief each other about the situation on their end, and then Arata asks Arata too how he feels about Kotoha. He replies that they grew up together, and he thinks of her as his little sister, whom he must protect at all costs. Arata thinks that Kotoha will be heartbroken if she hears this, but he promises Arata too to protect her in his place. After that, Arata too tells him that he went to school today and made an annoying guy named Masato behave himself. Arata's brain is rattled on hearing Masato's name, and when Arata too asks him if anything is wrong, the portal shuts down. Arata is still lost in his thoughts when Kana sneaks behind him and strangles him. He tells Arata to hand over his divine sword of origins, but he refuses. Kana hits him and throws him to the ground, and then suddenly fire erupts all around them. Arata is confused about how Kana can use fire without his sword, and he replies that the fire here is because of a natural phenomenon. But even without his weapon, he is a chosen one and he can easily manipulate it. Kana attacks Arata with the flames, and he summons his sword and activates its power to block the attack. The shield dissipates, and then Kana asks Arata to hand the sword over, and he will spare him. He walks towards Arata, who can't stop trembling, and Kana asks why the legendary sword of origins chose a pathetic coward like him. He takes the sword away and is about to attack Arata when Kotoha comes running and asks him to stop. Suddenly, Kotoha is engulfed in flames, and Kana sees horrible flashbacks of his past. Arata runs towards her, but Kotoha asks him not to come close. She tells him to leave her because he has greater things to do, but Arata dives into the fire, saying that he swore to protect her. On seeing this, Kana's shoulder wound begins hurting, and he drops the sword as he rushes to save Arata and Kotoha. He loses consciousness with that and sees his past. He was the son of the lord of the territory, and Akka and the girl named Imai were his servants. They grew up together, with Akka being Kana's training partner and Imai being the girl he had a crush on. Then one day the lord died and the servants rebelled to kill Kana. He ran away with his two friends, but Akka stayed behind to stop the attackers. While he fought the attackers, Kana took Imai to a boat and they drifted to a distant island, where they were found by a group of people, including the young Mohika. As Kana wakes up from the dream, he mistakes Kotoha for Imai. He decides to tell everyone the rest of his story and says that the people who found them were really kind, and he decided to forget his past and live happily with Ima here. However, he fell ill one day and Ima went to get medicinal herbs, despite Ohika's warning that the natural flames in this area were prominent during the season. When Kana woke up and saw the mountain on fire, he followed his intuition and ran up the mountain to save Ima. However, she was already surrounded by flames. He tried to save her, but the fire attacked him, dealing him a nasty wound on his shoulder and throwing him off the cliff. He somehow climbed out only to see Ima getting burned to death. Kana decided to kill himself because he felt he had nothing left in life after losing her. However, on hearing his cries, the fire god Homura appeared before him in the form of a sword and chose him as its wielder. Kana tells Arata and others that for him, his sword is Ime and he wants her back at all costs. Thinking about his backstory and betrayal from his best friend, Arata pities Kana and tells him to join his group. He promises that they will get back his sword and then they can change the kingdom together. Kana accepts his offer, and the news reaches other members of the 12 Guardians. They get ready to make their move soon because the 6 Guardians who always work together have also started taking action as the war to decide the fate of the kingdom grows more intense. The 6 Guardians are keeping watch over the body of Princess, who is still barely hanging on to life somehow. They are sure that she can't gather enough strength to come back to life, but they have heard about Arata obtaining Tsukuyo, the Sword of Origins. The 6 Guardians fear that if Kiku comes into contact with Tsukuyo, she will be revived, but one of them claims that he has taken precautions to ensure that it will not happen. They go to the Kanda Forest where the 2 Aratas switch bodies. The 6 Guardians know that the Arata they are facing is from another world, so they send one of their own into the forest to awaken a power that will help them defeat him. Meanwhile, in the real world, Masato is throwing a tantrum after getting his ass whooped by Arata 2. After that, he gets into a fight with his dad, who insults him for being half-assed at everything because he quit the athletic teams after losing. When Masato talks back and calls his dad a corrupt councilman and a cheater, his dad gives him a tight slap and says that his mom left because he was a failure. At the same time, Arata 2 also returns home and tells his mom that nothing special happened at school. He leaves to his room with that, but his sister stops him and tells him to talk more to their mom because she has been worried a lot about him. Arata 2 can't bring himself to do it because he never had a mother in his life. Later, as he is wondering what is the deal between Arata and Masato, he sees Arata's new friend Suguru circling the house. As soon as he realizes that he has been seen, Suguru runs away, but Arata 2 manages to intercept him. He asks Suguru if they are friends, and the nerd thinks that he heard him talking to the bullies that Arata is not his friend. He says that he had no choice but to say those things, otherwise he would be bullied too. He starts crying as he apologizes to Arata 2, who says that it doesn't matter because he is still his friend. That reminds him of Masato, and he asks Suguru to take him to his place. They reach a metro station, where the already pissed Masato finds his friends making fun of him behind his back. When he approaches them, they ask him if he wants to fight, but before anything can happen, Arata 2 arrives there. He says that he will join Masato if a fight starts to make things even, and the boys immediately scatter. Arata 2 then asks Masato if he is fine, but that pisses him off because he didn't want his help. He accuses Arata of always looking down on others, like the time he deliberately lost to him in a race, but Arata 2 doesn't even know what he is talking about. He is about to reveal that he is not the real Arata when his mom comes there looking for him. She slaps Arata 2 for running away from home without informing them, and then breaks into tears because she was worried about him. Seeing this shakes Masato's heart as he recalls his mom leaving their family after she caught her husband cheating. He begins stumbling away, furious at everyone and everything. He blames Arata for everything because his downfall started when Arata deliberately slowed himself to let him win. He curses him and swears to kill him. At the same time, in the fantasy world, the tattooed guardian asks the forest to open the gate to the other world and lead him to the person who hates Arata the most. Suddenly, he and Masato find themselves floating in the air, and the guardian gives all the information he has about Arata to Masato through magic. With that, they switch places, and as Masato comes out of the forest, he realizes that the Arata he was dealing with was a fake one. He asks the remaining 5 masked guardians about the location of Arata so that he can kill him. Arata and his ground are passing through a forest when it suddenly starts raining, and Kana, who is traveling with them now, says that they are in Yoru's territory. He explains that Yoru is one of the 12 guardians with the power to control water and cause rains. As they try to find shelter, Arata asks Kana about the powers and personalities of the remaining guardians. Kana refuses to tell him anything because, at the end of the day, they are still enemies. However, he reveals that the 12 guardians barely work together. The 6 masked guardians were even stranger than the rest because no one had seen their faces or their powers. At the same time, the five guardians take Masato to their headquarters and tell him how Arata has become a chosen warrior, and now he is aiming to become the king of this country. They tell him that only he can stop Arata because of the hatred in his heart, and for that, he must become a chosen warrior as well. Masato doesn't understand everything, but he is ready to do anything it takes to defeat Arata. The five guardians lead him down to the depths of their basement, where they open the gate to a room containing the only weapon that can defeat Arata and his sword, Tsukuyo. They tell them that the forbidden holy weapon named Orochi, that is surrounded by the mummified remains of those who tried to obtain it, has been asleep forever, but if someone hates the wielder of Tsukuyo enough, it shall awaken and choose him. As Masato holds the sword named Orochi, it awakens and all the chosen warriors feel a strange sensation, with Arata feeling his holy sword burning his hand. The dark energy from Orochi surrounds Masato's body and he struggles to get it under his control. Suddenly, he finds himself within the domain of the terrifying god sealed in the sword, who asks him to show him his hatred. Masato tells Orochi to give him power so that he can destroy Arata, and the evil god agrees. It grants Masato its powers and chooses him as the warrior who will spread hatred and violence in the world. The next day, Masato walks towards Arata, who feels a sharp pain through his sword. He draws out his sword and finds that it is reacting weirdly when suddenly, Masato appears before him. Arata is dumbfounded upon seeing him, and he asks his friend-turned-enemy what he is doing here. Masato simply takes out the dark sword Orochi from his body and then activates its power to send a dark slash towards Arata. The mortified Arata reacts in time and activates his sword's barrier ability to protect his group, but he is too shaken after that. Konoha asks Arata who is the man in front of them, and he asks Masato what he is doing in this world. Masato throws the question back at him, asking if he came to this world because he was afraid of him. Seeing Arata's response, Masato thinks that he hit the mark. He calls Arata a spineless coward who always got bullied without fighting back, and it is a shame that he wields the strongest weapon in this world. Masato keeps insulting Arata, who grows gloomy and edgy as he tells him to shut up. Suddenly, the spark in his sword vanishes, and it begins to release a dark energy. Everyone is shocked that even the Sword of Origins has started to defect to the dark side, and then Arata shoots a powerful dark blast at Masato. Despite using his sword to shield himself, Masato takes some damage, but Arata is not done yet. He tells Masato that he will pay for everything he puts him through, and the dark energy begins overflowing through his body, turning him into a demon. Kana says that he must be stopped before he becomes a true demon, and Konoha runs to Arata and hugs him without worrying about her safety. She asks Arata not to become a demon because she believes that he is the kindest man in the world. On hearing her words, the dark energy finally dissipates and Arata returns to his senses. Konoha loses her consciousness with that, and Ken comes running to her side. Masato is about to attack Arata once again, then the five guardians come there and tell him to retreat for now. They couldn't predict that even Tsukuyo could demonize, and thus they decide that Masato needs to awaken Orochi's full power before fighting against Arata. Masato takes one look at the depressed Arata before going away, and Kana realizes that the six guardians are their enemies now. Arata is too heartbroken and ashamed to notice any of that, and he drops his sword. Kana seizes this chance and grabs the sword immediately. He runs away with it, and Ken chases after him to get the sword back. Only after that does Arata notice Konoha lying unconscious on the ground. He frantically calls out to her, and she wakes up relieved that Arata is still normal. They take shelter in an abandoned hut where Arata is feeling guilty about hurting Konoha. She only asks him about Masato and what he meant when he was talking about the other world. She tries to hold his hand, but Arata flinches and pulls it back, and Konoha finally realizes that he is not the boy she grew up with. Arata confirms that he exchanged places with Arata too after he went into the Kanda forest. He tells Konoha that when he tried telling her the truth, she did not believe him and there was not enough time to prove things. He still apologizes, but Konoha is distraught that Arata too is not with her. Arata assures her that he is living safely in the modern world. Konoha then asks him who was the man who caused him to become a demon earlier, and Arata replies that Masato is someone who hates him. He tells her how Masato and his friends bullied him every day of middle school, and being a wimp, he could not fight back. Arata claims that he never wanted power that could be used to hurt others, but now he has it. With that, he walks out to clear his mind, and at the same time Ken finds Kana. He tries to attack him and take Arata's sword back, but Kana tells him that he is going to return on his own. They return to find Arata in a slump, and Kana asks him if he is not going to take back his sword. When Arata doesn't show any reaction, Kana pins him against a tree and stabs the sword next to him. Arata asks him if he doesn't want his sword now, and Kana replies that his divine sword is too heavy with great responsibilities, and only he can wield it. The next day, Arata resumes his training with Ken, and he is more focused now. Suddenly, Ken decides to serve as his sparring partner. He checks Ken's weapon to lower Arata's guard and then suddenly attacks him by surprise. Arata can only block his attacks, and as Kana pushes him to the edge, he tells him that the man he fought yesterday was with the 6 Guardians and he will surely keep coming after him. He tells Arata that he is too weak to face him right now, and at this rate, he won't be able to protect himself. Kana disarms Arata and then hits his sword into the valley below, telling him that he is not ready to use it just yet. He tells him to find the divine sword before sunset to prove that he is ready for what it takes. Otherwise, the group will disband. Frustrated, Arata ventures into the forest below and finds a huge wolf holding his sword. The wolf runs away and Arata chases after it, not yet certain why he is doing this. With doubt in his mind, he keeps running after the wolf when he suddenly sees a vision of Masato running next to him. Masato used to tell Arata that running with him was the best part of his life, and he encouraged him to keep running with his eyes forward. Just as Arata comes out of his flashback, he sees the wolf has stopped. He begins thinking about how Masato was his best friend, and he still wants to understand him. He returns to the group with the sword, and Ken agrees to give him another chance. Arata then goes to Kotoha and tells her that he will try his best to grow stronger and not become a demon the next time he faces Masato. She is moved to tears by his determination and says that she will support him, and Arata suddenly hugs her to thank her for everything. On the other hand, Masato wakes up from his sleep with a servant girl named Mia by his side. He is irritated by her excessive cheerfulness and her clumsy personality, so he sends her away. Later, as he is gazing into the sunset while cursing Arata, Maya comes to him and asks about Arata. Masato says Arata is the person he hates the most, but after hearing his rant, Maya claims Masato really likes Arata because he lives in his head rent-free. Masato is furious at this and almost attacks the servant, telling her that Arata ruined his life. He tells her the story of how he was in a slump after his mom left their family, and that affected his performance. He asked Arata to run with him so that he could get some motivation, but at the end of the lap, Arata reduced his speed so that they could draw. That hurt Masato's ego because he wanted to lose honestly to his friend. He grabbed Arata's collar, accusing him of slowing down on purpose because he pitied him. After that, he started believing that Arata was never his friend because he always looked down on him, and now he plans to take revenge on him. Soon after that, Arata and his group arrive at a patch of forest with lots of butterflies, and they don't notice that the glowing blue butterfly among them is a spy from the Guardian named Yoru. He is watching over Arata from his palace, and all of his servants kneel before him, while an old man is trapped in a water bubble. The servants ask Yoru to have mercy on the old man, but he says that he must be punished because he failed the simple mission to take control of all the salt trade in the kingdom. Yoru doesn't care if the people will suffer because of it, because he needs to monopolize the salt trade and become stronger than other chosen warriors. He finally frees the old man from the water prison and warns everyone that if they want to serve him, they should carry out his orders perfectly. On the other hand, Kana is leading Arata and others to Yoru's territory, but Arata says that he doesn't want to meet him right now. He claims to have no intention to fight Yoru before knowing what kind of person he is, and that is why he wants to meet his close servants first. Kotoha immediately agrees with Arata's idea, and seeing her all friendly with him, Ken wonders what changed between the two. Arata then asks Kana about the nearest town, and they immediately set out to it. They come to the richest city in the entire kingdom, which is ruled by one of Yoru's servants. They are stopped at gates because they don't have enough money to pay the entry tax, and as the gatekeeper begins looking for ways they can earn the money, a man named Su comes there and takes them inside. He gives everyone a tour of the city, and Kotoha gets her eyes on some nice hairpins. However, they have no money, and Su tells them to work so that they can pay their entry tax and then shop with whatever is left. The men are sent to a mine to dig and carry stones, while Kotoha goes to the laundry center. Seeing how Su is in charge of everything, Arata thinks that he may be the closest way to get to Yoru's servant. At night, he asks a shopkeeper about Yoru, but he has never even seen him in the town. He tries selling some stuff to Arata, who decides to buy the hairpin that Kotoha wanted. Just then, Su arrives there, and later, Arata asks him if he has ever met Yoru. Su tells him that Yoru is a noble and wise man, and right now he is aiming to achieve perfection in everything he does. He reveals that Yoru came up with the laws of this city that made it the most prosperous place in the entire kingdom. The next day, as Arata and Ken are working in the mine, they suddenly see the chief beating a boy for breaking a carriage. Arata and Ken reach to support him, and they see that other workers deliberately damage the carriage to blame the boy. The chief refuses to listen to reason and fires the boy, deducting all of his pay in the name of repair fee. Ken has had enough of it, and he is about to throw hands at the chief when Su arrives there and stops them. After that, Arata and others go to the house of the boy who lives in the hidden slum along with other poor people. He explains that his parents were cloth merchants, but when they fell ill and died, their shop went bankrupt, and he was thrown out into the slums. On top of that, the chief who just fired him used to be a head clerk at their store. Arata and Ken are furious at this injustice, and then they learn that the boy can't even leave the city because the exit fee is too high. Arata thinks that it is mockery to call this place a perfect city, and Kanna says that it is just about pulling others down to reach the top. Su is listening to everything from outside the hut, and Kanna goes to confront him. Su knows who Kanna is and asks him what he is doing with a random like Arata, but Kanna asks him not to underestimate the boy. Inside, Ken makes soup for the boy, who is moved to tears as he tastes it. He thanks Arata and Ken for supporting him when he wanted to just disappear from this world. Arata is shocked to hear this because these words remind him of himself from the past. He manages to talk sense into the boy that it is not worth it to escape from the world because you feel alone and pathetic, and one must keep trying to reach better things. The boy says that he just wants to leave the city, and Arata tells him that they will help him sneak out. Just then, Kotoha and Ken also arrive there, and they are also ready to help the boy. At night, they reach the gates and knock out the guards. They are about to break out when suddenly Su arrives there. Ken requests that he let them go, but Su refuses to do so as he draws out a holy sword from his chest. He introduces himself as the master of this city and the #1 servant of Yoru. Arata draws out his sword too, telling Su that this city is not perfect at all. He says that the city is heartless just like Yoru, and those words remind Su of his first meeting with his master. He had attacked Yoru out of frustration when he realized that everyone was trying to get closer to him just for his money. He was hoping that Yoru would finish him, but instead he gave him hope and asked him to become his servant instead. Su suddenly snaps out of his flashback and attacks Arata with his ability, which is just shooting a boatload of coins at his opponent. Arata manages to block it, but Su doesn't attack him again. He claims that he has been watching over him on Yoru's orders, and he has seen him struggling and rising above the challenges he has faced. Su tells Arata that he believes in him, and just then, Yoru's spy butterfly begins hovering around him. Su just smiles as he tells the boy that he doesn't need to leave the city because he is going to defy Yoru and change it into a more human place. He then asks Arata to change Yoru to the kind person he once was because he is the only one who can do it. On the other hand, the 5 guardians tell Masato that he needs to meet another person who came to this world from Earth so that he can become more powerful. They show him images of rock spikes piercing through men and a pile of bodies, and then reveal that this is the power of Akka, who had also come here from the other world. Once they reach Akka's territory, he attacks their ship to tell them to get away. The ship is about to retreat, but Masato jumps down to talk to Akka. He uses the power of his sword to land safely, and then asks Akka to team up with him so that they can defeat Arata and Kanna together. Akka is not interested in losers like him, so he starts walking away, but that Masato throws a tantrum, saying that he just wants to defeat Arata at all costs, otherwise his coming here would be pointless. Akka finally gives him some attention and then suddenly reaches close to him with his spear pointed at Masato's face. Akka tells him that he is too soft and weak to defeat Arata, and he stabs his eye to give him a sense of loss. He then tells Masato that the more they lose on the path to become stronger, the better is the result. Masato was ready to lose everything if it meant he could defeat Arata, and to honor his determination, Akka accepts him as a student and even gives him his eye. On the other side, Kanna leads the group to Yoru's palace, which is located over a small island and has a strange water ball floating high above it. Inside the palace, Yoru greets his mother, who is trapped inside a water ball, and tells her that once he obtains the divine sword Tsukuyo, he will just one step away from becoming the king, and then maybe she will be proud of him. Outside the palace, Arata and Kotoha wait for Ken and Kanna, who have left on a recon mission. Arata is about to give the hairpin he bought to Kotoha when she suddenly starts talking about how much he must want to go home. She says that he must have family and friends in his world, and she will look after him on their behalf till it is time for him to return. She runs away without hearing what Arata has to say, and he takes out the hairpin he could not give her. He finally realizes that he had stopped thinking about returning to his world ever since he promised the princess to save her. As he is lost in thoughts about his uncertain future, he suddenly hears Kotoha screaming and runs towards her. He finds a water tentacle grabbing her leg, and by the time he draws out his divine sword, more tentacles attack Kotoha and trap her in a water ball. She is dragged away into the sea, and Arata can only shout her name as Ken and Kanna return. Kanna says that this is Yoru's power, and Arata immediately runs towards his palace to save Kotoha. The gates of the palace are open, and there is no guard to block Arata as he reaches inside and finds Kotoha trapped and tied. Suddenly, water starts filling the bubble she is kept in, and Arata draws his sword to free her. He uses his sword's ability to attack the bubble, but it does no damage. Just then, Yoru appears there and greets Arata, telling him that he is too weak to break the prison right now. Kana and Ken arrive there too, and Yoru mocks Kana for getting his holy sword stolen by Akka. The water inside the bubble keeps rising, and Arata demands Yoru to free Kotoha. He tells him to either make him submit or surrender to him if he wants to free the girl. Arata calls him a coward, but Yoru claims that this is the perfect way to subdue him and make his mama proud. He attacks with a wave of water, and Arata blocks it with his barrier. Kana and Ken want to help Kotoha, but Yoru blocks their way too. All of his servants watch the fight, and Su convinces everyone to support Arata because he is the only one who can turn Yoru into a kind person once again. Arata can only dodge Yoru's attacks, and as Su helps him block an attack coming from his blind point, Yoru gets angry and attacks his servants. Arata loses focus as he sees Kotoha in trouble, and Yoru uses this chance to hit him with a water attack and trap him. As Arata is about to be submerged in the glowing green water, Su realizes that Yoru is going to use his special move that will end the battle instantly. Suddenly, a flying ship appears above them, and someone jumps out of it. It is Masato, who has come here to beat Arata after getting stronger. He uses the power of his unholy sword to crash land in the palace and begins looking for Arata. As he sees him drowning, he asks Yoru what he is doing with his enemy. Yoru replies that Arata is asleep and he will surrender to him in his sleep. Masato can't let anyone else defeat Arata, so he attacks him, but Yoru blocks his attack and then traps him in a water bubble as well. He submerges Masato inside the pool and then enters it himself to defeat both the boys. Inside the pool, Arata feels warm and safe, and then he suddenly opens his eyes to find himself in his home. His mom has made his favorite soup, but then she asks him about the oath of surrender. She tries to blackmail him into saying that he surrenders his power to Yoru, but Arata refuses. Seeing that he still has the will to fight back, Yoru uses his power and makes Arata younger, changing his dream to a time when he got into a fight in elementary school. His mom tells him to give up and say the words that will stop his pain, but he still refuses to surrender. Yoru rewinds time some more, but even the young Arata doesn't surrender. Fed up that Arata is not listening to his mother, Yoru decides to kill him. He reverses time some more to turn Arata into an infant, but then suddenly, Kotoha's voice starts echoing in Arata's mind, telling him to keep fighting. Arata suddenly grows up to his normal age and tells his mom that he needs to go. He tells her that he has a girl he loves, and even in the artificial dream, his mom wishes him the best of luck. With that, Arata unleashes the full power of his sword, Tsukuyo, shattering Yoru's technique, as well as the giant water ball over his palace with a bright golden light. With golden dust falling from the sky, Arata descends to the ground with Kotoha in his arms. Everyone is amazed to see it, and Kotoha opens her eyes once she lands safely. Yoru comes out of the pool, furious that Arata broke through his technique and also because he refused to listen to his mom. Arata replies that his mom would not tell him to give up even in dreams, and he is free to do whatever he wants. Yoru tries attacking him, but his power doesn't activate because his divine weapon has lost its will to fight. Suddenly, a terrible realization dawns on Yoru, and he runs to the room where his mother is kept. The water ball she was trapped in bursts, leaving only an empty set of clothes behind. Yoru has a meltdown as he loses his mother, but Su tells everyone that his real mother has died long ago, and this one was just an illusion he created for himself. Yoru's mother never showed him any affection, and she kept scolding him to be perfect in everything. He worked hard, hoping that she would praise him one day, but even after he became one of the 12 guardians, she did not change. She passed away soon after, and Yoru thought that if he becomes the king, she will finally acknowledge him. But now he has failed terribly at everything. Kana suddenly walks ahead to a small box on a stand, and Yoru tells him not to touch it because it is the gift his mom gave him just before she died. Kana asks him what is inside it, and Yoru replies that he never dared to open it because he felt that he was not worthy of it. Everyone tells him to look inside because there might be a message for him, and Yoru obliges. He opens the box and finds a poorly crafted necklace that he had made for his mom in childhood, and she refused to accept it, saying that it was a waste of her and his time. Yoru is dumbfounded, and then his old servant tells him that the strict act his mother always put on was just for his sake. She knew that Yoru was a spoiled and kind kid who knew nothing of the challenges of the real world. He had already lost his dad, so his mom took the responsibility of preparing him for the future by acting tough, even though it broke her heart. When Yoru realizes the truth, he breaks into tears and finally realizes that he had lost his path. He apologizes to his servants for all the wrongs he has done, and then thanks Arata for making him realize that. He asks him what he thinks is the most important thing in this world, and Arata replies that it is the bonds they make with others. Yoru is pleased with the answer, but just then Masato arrives there, and he is not happy to hear about bonds from Arata's mouth. He tells him that he has no need for any human relations because he will crush him and kill him right here. He says that Arata is the same too because he hates him enough to turn into a demon to kill him. Arata shudders on hearing that, and Masato tells him to turn into a demon again so that they can fight it out. Arata declares that he will never become a demon again and swears that he will change Masato's heart. Masato replies that he won't be changed by someone as weak as him, and then points his sword at Arata. His sword, Orochi, suddenly evolves and grows stronger, and Arata has no choice but to draw out his weapon too. Masato charges at him, and the clash of their swords destroys the room they were in. Arata takes advantage of the smoke and runs away, but Masato gives chase. He attacks with the elongated blades of his sword, and Arata can only dodge. Konoha is worried about him as she recalls how Arata turned into a demon the last time he fought Masato. She asks Kana to help him, but he refuses, saying that this is a battle Arata must fight alone. She turns to Ken, but he agrees with Kana, and adds that he won't be any help either way. However, he tells Konoha to believe in Arata because he will not turn into a demon and still win. On the other hand, Arata is constantly being pushed back by Masato's shape-shifting sword and relentless attacks. He activates his sword's barrier to block it, and Masato tells him to stop hiding like a coward and attack. He says that this is a battle for submission, and Arata replies that he doesn't want to make anyone submit. Suddenly, Ken cheers on Arata, telling him to fight back or he won't be able to reach Princess Kiku. Arata suddenly realizes that he must live up to the trust the princess put in him. Konoha also reaches there and tells Arata that everyone believes in him. He recalls the faces of all his friends and gets the determination to see the fight to the end. However, Masato tells him that belief is a worthless thing as he unleashes the dark power of his sword. The darkness begins overwhelming Arata, and he can't defeat it using his sword's abilities. Everyone thinks that he is in trouble because the sword Tsukuyo doesn't have any offensive abilities. Yor decides to help him out by submitting to him and giving him all the powers and abilities of his weapon. His servants try to stop him, but Yor says that supporting Arata right now is a greater act than becoming the king, and maybe his mother will be proud of him for doing that. Even Arata doesn't want him to submit to him, but Yor has made up his mind and he tells Arata to change the world for his sake too. As Yor starts the submission oath, Arata tells him to stop, but Kana tells him to stop being a wimp. He tells him that Yoru is entrusting his life, power, and dreams to him, and he should man up and continue moving forward with this new power. Yoru then completes the oath of submission, and his body turns into golden energy to enter Arata's sword. Arata has an outburst of emotions and energy that destroys the entire palace. Arata and Masato stand in front of each other, and he finally asks Masato why he wants to fight him so badly. Masato remembers their past and tells Arata that he wants to defeat him at all costs when he is at his best. Arata asks if he is not satisfied with all the bullying over the years, but Masato tells him that he is too dumb to understand the truth. He suddenly attacks Arata with the whip blades, but Arata transforms his sword into Yor's weapon and deflects Masato's attacks with water jets. Masato tries attacking again, but Arata deflects his blades this time too. Seeing Arata finally taking their fight seriously, Masato decides that it is his chance to properly defeat him. He uses the whip blades to launch himself into the air and then charges at Arata, with both of them calling out the power of their divine swords. Arata tells Masato that his fight is not just his anymore, so he won't lose. He pushes Masato away before unleashing the full power of his sword that starts to glow and restore itself. Suddenly, the ground starts shaking and huge rock pillars emerge out of the sea. Everyone is amazed by Arata's power, even Masato is left speechless. Arata declares that for the sake of his friends in this world, he will fight with all his strength. He lifts up his sword, creating a golden barrier and a set of ethereal wings made of pure energy around him. Everyone is stunned to see this because Arata has finally activated the full power of Tsukuyo. He swings his sword and a huge gust of energy is sent towards Masato, who declares that he will not give up on his dream and will surely defeat him one day. He tells Arata to wait for the next time they fight and then gets blown away by the tremendous amount of energy. As Arata savors his victory, he suddenly feels like the time he used to run with Masato in middle school. It doesn't feel like he was in a life or death battle, but in a friendly competition. He then sits down thanking Tsukuyo for giving him its power. Suddenly, Konoha climbs up the rock and hugs Arata, telling him that she is relieved that he is unharmed. Arata takes this chance to give her the hairpin he bought for her, and she is happy to receive it. After that, Arata meets Yor's servants who have decided to follow their master's lead and submit to Arata as well. He asks them if they are sure, and everyone tells him that they want to give him their powers so that he can change the world. With that, all the servants submit to Arata and become part of his strength. After absorbing their energy and life force, Arata declares that he will keep moving forward to prove that everyone was right in placing their trust in him. If you like this video, then subscribe and watch the video on the screen next.